you all for joining us for the Adult Drug Court Discretionary Grant Program webinar training. Before we get into the training, Gregory Terrain from BJA would like to say a few things. Greg, let me turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Jimmy. Welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Gregory Terrain. I am the policy advisor for the BJA Adult Drug Court Discretionary Grant Program. Both myself and the drug court team would like to thank you for all your consistent hard work, every day working hard to work with communities and help save lives. Today, I just want to give you guys just a couple updates regarding the drug court program. First, in regards to the solicitation for FY 2020. So we anticipate that being released sometime in December of 2019. I would like you to please check back with the BJA website under our funding page for any information related to the release of that solicitation. Also, for any information regarding funding, please Google News from BJA. That's all one word, News from BJA, and it just provides your name and email address, and you'll get the latest information regarding BJA funding opportunities. Also, one other thing to update you guys on our National Training Technical Assistance. As many of you already know, by being grantees, we offer a variety of different training from our National Drug Court Resource Center, which is a website where we house a lot of our resources and a lot of information related to drug court, our maps and things of that nature. Also, we have our Drug Court Plan Initiative, which works with new courts looking to implement a new drug court through our Drug Court Training Initiative, our site-based training, which many of you probably participated by being a new grantee, where you get your drug court assessed and get recommendations to help support you as a drug court, our state-based and our tribal healing and wellness court. We have a new category of TTA that we're providing this year, which is our Veteran Treatment Court site-specific TTA, which obviously is going to be for veteran treatment courts coming out, doing an initial assessment, providing recommendations, as well as providing operational tune-ups to operational drug courts that have been funded at least 2 years. So that's a new category we have. Again, some of the priorities for our drug court program that's consistent with the administration's priorities is really supporting rural communities as well as tribal communities, making sure that we provide access to service to our veterans through our support of veteran treatment courts, as well as targeting areas of high drug overdose death rates. So some of the priority areas that we'll be looking at in 2020, which some of these you would know by some of the previous webinars that we've done have been priorities in 2019 and 2018. And then lastly, in 2019, we made over 90 awards, and going to 2020, we're looking to make up to 114 awards. So as the funding continues to increase by the great work that you guys are doing and a lot of the research that's positive related to drug courts, we continue to have an increase in funding, which allows us to continue to make more awards. So this year, if you currently have a BJA grant or it's getting ready to run out, or you know other coordinators that are looking for funding, please have them apply. We're looking for more creative applications to come in and looking to support, as well as especially veteran treatment courts. Those are consistent with the priorities I mentioned. Again, rural, tribal, veterans. So that's all I have. I'd like to turn it back over to Jimmy.
Thank you, Greg. That's great information to have for everybody. Now let's get into the training. This webinar will serve as a refresher for PMT reporting requirements. It is anticipated that the training will take about 30 minutes, and we will save time at the end to answer any questions. This training will cover 4 sections. First, a brief review of the performance measure reporting and its importance to BJA and grantees. Second, we will discuss some of the key performance indicators. Then we will cover a few of the common reporting challenges. Finally, the training will cover a few frequently asked questions. At the end of this training, you should walk away with a better understanding of why BJA requires you to report performance measures and how we use this information. During the training, you will get a basic review of the drug court-specific reporting requirements and some issues we see in reporting and how to avoid those issues to improve the data you report back to BJA. This section of the training will provide an overview of the performance measures and performance reporting process. So what exactly is the PMT? The Performance Measurement Tool is an online data collection tool for Office of Justice Programs grant recipients. It is structured as an online questionnaire and is available year-round. The PMT contains lots of information and tools to assist you in your reporting. You can access the PMT by following the link on this page if you are new to reporting. This table outlines the type of data you'll be reporting each reporting period, when your reports are due in the PMT, and whether you also need to upload your reports to GMS. As you can see from the alternating values under the second column, you will only report on the narrative questions in January, July, and during your last reporting period prior to closing out your grant activity, regardless of where that falls on the schedule. As you can see from the table, the PMT is only open for data entry during the month after a reporting period closes. The PMT is accessible year-round for you to review and edit your data, generate reports, and more, but you will need to contact the PMT Help Desk to unlock your reports when you need to revise previously completed reports. Note that these reports are due 30 days after the end of a reporting period. The first page of each performance measure questionnaire outlines additional resources that may be helpful as you report. It includes reminders about the program's goals and objectives and lists contact information for the PMT Help Desk and state policy advisors if you need to reach out with any questions. Links to the PDF version of the performance measures questionnaire can be found on this slide. Note that the versions differ based on whether you receive an enhancement grant or an implementation grant. We like to note each program's goals and objectives as a reminder of why we are asking you to fill out this questionnaire each quarter. The measures are ultimately there to assess your progress toward the drug court program's goals, which we will discuss in more detail later on in this presentation. We also have a reporting tip on this slide. These reporting tips may appear throughout the presentation where we think there is additional information that can help clarify PMT reporting. This one highlights that some grantees find it easier to track required data outside of the PMT in smaller time increments, maybe by week or by month, and then add it all together when it is time to report in the PMT to get their reporting period totals. We strongly encourage you to use whatever approach makes it easiest for you to report your totals each reporting period. Here we are going to discuss the different types of performance measurement data that we look at from the drug court program. First are the inputs. Inputs refer to the program resources. Examples include grant funding, information and data management tools, and the drug court team. Activities are the actions that convert inputs to outputs that eventually result in measurable progress toward the program's goals. These include all of the processes and activities that make up a drug court, such as screening, drug testing, training, and providing services. Outputs are the accountable products or services that result from these actions. For our purposes, we are interested in the people in the drug court program and the services they receive. Outcomes speak to longer-term program goals. In this case, you should be looking at graduation rates and recidivism, relapse, and/or subsequent court or criminal involvement. With all that in mind, let's look at the goal of the drug court program as defined in the drug court solicitation. I highlighted a few components of the goal statement. Specifically, BJA drug court funding is to be used to provide assistance to localities or states to implement or enhance drug courts and veterans treatment courts, to integrate evidence-based treatment and combine that with mandatory drug testing, appropriate sanctions and incentives, as well as transitional services. Related to the drug court goal statement are certain objectives. Performance measures are tied to each of these objectives. The first objective is to provide a mechanism to assess potential participants for their risk level and social and psychological needs. Drug courts use a variety of risk and/or needs assessment tools. Secondly, all drug court programs are to focus on programming around the substance abuse problems of participants. Additional programming will focus on the cognitive, behavioral, social, and vocational needs of the offender. Urinalysis or some other form of drug testing is also required. It should be periodic and random, including pre- and post-program. Finally, incentives and sanctions should be applied appropriately, all while considering the long-term community reintegration and support services that are needed by the participants. To see how these objectives align with the performance measures, this slide details certain drug court objectives. For the first objective, which is to implement or expand drug court services, we look at overall enrollment, completion, and non-completion rates. For the second objective, we look at the utilization of screening and assessment tools, length of time in program, and the availability of a certain array of services. We recognize that programs will differ in their design and implementation. In particular, drug courts will vary in the array of services that can be offered. Finally, the last objective is straightforward in that we are looking at the drug and alcohol testing. Performance measures have many benefits to BJA. It allows BJA to look at the drug court program holistically, as well as at the local level to identify success, as well as potential areas of improvement. This allows BJA to target training and technical assistance resources to subjects or localities that need them most. BJA and OJP also tracks progress toward goals. BJA reports annual drug court key performance indicators to OJP leadership during budget formulation, as well as ongoing yearly monitoring. Lastly, the Department of Justice is required to follow the Government Performance and Results Modernization Act of 2010, requiring the monitoring of certain programmatic activities. Not only does BJA benefit from performance measurement, but grantees should also be systematically monitoring their own performance measures to include some of the data BJA collects, but possibly more at the local level. Now let's take a quick moment to do a review of what we have covered. We will put up a poll for each question in the slides. Please respond and we will look at the results. So on the right-hand side, you should see a poll pop up after I read this. How many days after the close of a reporting period is your PMT report due? And then second, how do performance measures help grantees? Looks like C was the most common response for number one, and that is correct. That is the correct answer. And for number two, D was obviously the correct response there, and it looks like most people got that. So let's move to the next one. Another polling question, and this one you can just type in your response. What key metric or performance measure does your drug court monitor on a frequent basis? So we will go ahead and move on. And as we're going through this, if you think of certain metrics or measures that are most important to you and you want to put those in the chat box, please feel free to do so. Now let's get into some detail about the performance measurement questionnaire. PMT reporting is mandated to be award-based. In other words, BJA must collect performance data on each federal award and those associated activities. This is important to note if you have multiple awards if you have multiple award funding grants that are funding the same drug court program. Later, we will discuss strategies to avoid duplicate reporting of data on both of those awards. There are 3 PMT questionnaires for 3 types of grantees. Subgrantees to courts of statewide grantees must be assigned to either the implementation or enhancement questionnaire. It states in the solicitation that all drug courts must follow the 10 key components of the drug court model. You can find this publication at www.ndcrc.org or just type in 10 key components in the search box. As mentioned in the earlier part of the training, the questions in the PMT are made up of 2 main categories. The first is the quantitative program performance measures. This is where you enter the numeric data you collect over the course of the reporting period. For example, how many dollars were spent on equipment during the reporting period. The second section are the qualitative narrative questions. These questions are open-ended and do not require a numeric response. The narrative questions that are answered after the April through June and October through December reporting periods fall into this category. An example of this type of question could be, what were your accomplishments during the reporting period? Or what challenges did you face in completing your program goals during the reporting period? Remember, these questions are meant to capture the full experience you have with conducting activities with BJA funds, so the more information you provide, the better. The quantitative data you report is used to establish baselines, track performance against program goals, and create a nationwide picture of numeric data for BJA. Narrative questions are open-ended and give grantees a chance to express in their own words, how their experience has been conducting program activities with BJA funding. Both of these categories are equally important for your reporting, and you should take every possible measure to ensure the accuracy and integrity of your data. In a later slide, we will cover some tips as it relates to the narrative questions. The statewide questionnaire consists of 7 basic questions about grant activity, training, evaluation, research, and MIS enhancements, or Management Information System enhancements. The 7 narrative questions are also required. The drug court questionnaire consists of these question types. There are minor differences between the implementation grants and enhancement grants. Note that states that are funded under subcategory B and subgrant funds to local courts will need to create subgrant profiles in the PMT and assign measures. You can connect them to either the implementation or enhancement questionnaire. Statewide grantees that are conducting research or evaluation have a much smaller questionnaire. Please do not create subawards for these types of subgrants or contracts. Rather, the state grantee should report on behalf of the research team directly in the PMT under the prime award. You will be inputting race, ethnicity, and gender of drug court participants and those screened for eligibility for the following: newly admitted, screened but did not enroll, successfully completed, exited unsuccessfully. According to the NADCP's Drug Court Standards, Volume 1, citizens who have historically experienced sustained discrimination or reduced social opportunities because of their race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, sexual identity, physical or mental disability, religion, or socioeconomic status receive the same opportunities as other citizens to participate and succeed in the drug court. This includes standards on the following: equivalent access, equivalent retention, equivalent treatment, equivalent incentives and sanctions, equivalent dispositions, and team training. While performance data is not collected on all of these themes, BJA does recognize their importance, and through these measures encourages data collection on race, ethnicity, and gender on important stages of the drug court program. As noted in the previous slide, ethnicity, race, and gender information is collected at the following stages: screening and new admissions, graduation, and unsuccessful exits. This matrix is repeated throughout the questionnaire at each of these stages. Note that BJA distinguishes between ethnic origin, or focusing on Hispanic or Latino, and race. An ethnic group or ethnicity is a population group whose members identify with each other on the basis of common nationality or shared cultural traditions. The term race refers to the concept of dividing people into populations or groups on the basis of various sets of physical characteristics, which usually result from genetic ancestry. At times throughout the questionnaire, we use some verbiage that asks for a count as of the last day of the reporting period, which is a point-in-time count often used in prison or jail-based surveys. So here's a data entry tip that can be used as a guide. But to be clear, I want to use this example. If we wanted to know the number of people in my program as of the last day of the reporting period, I would count the number of persons actively enrolled in a drug court program on December 31, 2017. There may be more or less people in the program on December 30th or January 1st due to graduations and new admissions, but we are just wanting the count on that specific day. This allows the analyst to add in those participants that exited the program during the reporting period to get a total count of those served over a specified period of time. Here is an example of how we use the data reported to calculate the graduation rate performance measure. For this, we take the participants completing successfully and divide that by the number of people the number of people leaving the program successfully and unsuccessfully. When responding to narrative questions, you will be asked to provide updates on the goals that you have for the program as it relates to the grant funding. Here are a few reminders and tips to use when formulating goals. When reporting out on the progress of those goals, each semi-annual reporting period, please be specific and use data when possible. Lastly, keep in mind that the goal, especially as it relates to the grant funding, should be time-bound, typically within the grant period. Now let's cover some common reporting challenges. To enhance data quality, BJA does a few different things. First, we review submitted data for completeness and quality. When we do this, outlier or illogical data may be flagged. When this occurs, the help desk will reach out to grantees to provide clarification about the perceived issue. Please respond to those quality checks as soon as possible. It may be a simple data entry error or misunderstanding. Lastly, during site visits, grant managers will take some time to ensure you have proper procedures in place for reporting and may ask for documentation to support PMT data entry. You will be asked to tell us what type of court you have or the type of population you serve. If you need definitions for each of the types of specialty treatment courts, please contact the help desk and we will get that to you. If your court has more than one docket, but the grant funds are being used to specifically serve a certain population, then you will select the option that best applies to that population that the grant funds are serving. When funding one program with multiple federal awards, please do not duplicate data entry. Reporting duplicate data is unnecessary and inefficient. To avoid duplicate data entry, you can use the prorating method. Another option that I have seen is where the grantee reports all data under one award and leaves a comment on the other federal award that all activities reported under a certain federal award number. Then they attach both PMT GMS reports to GMS under both federal awards. If you do this, please check with your program manager if this is okay with them. Otherwise, use the prorating method. Subrecipients that are operating a court should be set up as a subaward. States can report on behalf of the subgrantee or have them report themselves. Projects that are related to research or system enhancements can be reported by the state on behalf of the research or implementation team. As noted earlier, please only report the assessment results of new participants and not of the total enrolled population. Enter 0 if you are not using an assessment instrument, but if that is the case, please tell us so in the open text box. If you are unclear about what constitutes recovery support services, a few examples have been provided here. These are also defined in an appendix in the FY 2019 drug court solicitation that you can review. Here are a few tips to improve data quality that you can do on your end. A designated staff person that coordinates all performance measure data collection and entry will be able to ensure consistency. If this is the first time you will report data, make sure you are familiar with the data you will need to collect and report. Do this by reviewing the PDF version of the questionnaire. Lastly, make sure all subrecipient data or data you receive from contracted service providers is reviewed and validated before you complete data entry. Before we finish up, let's do one more quick review. What are examples of recovery support services? And then second, how does BJA verify performance data? And we'll give a minute or a second to get the poll pulled up, and then we'll give it 30 seconds for you to respond. All right, looks like the poll has been opened. It's on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. And we'll give it 30 seconds or so to respond, for you to respond. All right, looks like most everybody got the first one correct, which is D. And then pretty much most people got the second one correct, which is also D. Here's the BJA PMT Help Desk contact information. Our office hours are Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, except U.S. federal holidays. We strive to return everybody's email and phone call within 24 hours, so please don't hesitate to leave a voicemail or email even after business hours. We'll leave the webinar open for about 5 to 10 minutes. You can download any handouts attached or use the Q&A box if you have any questions. The recording of today's training and other user material and resources will be posted online. On behalf of BJA and the PMT team, thank you for your time, dedication, and hard work. This now concludes the presentation, and we will respond to any questions that you have.